I asked Jeremy when I walked in, he showed me around a little bit, and I said, how's it feel to be everybody's father here? And he said, so I'm thinking to myself, maybe if I've just become your favorite aunt, this will all work really well. But it's true, we've known each other quite a while. I thought I'd start with a little bit about my background, beyond what Jeremy had said, because it gets into why I wrote the book. So I've been in the world of media my whole career. I left the corporate world of media 4 years ago. I'm a builder, an entrepreneur by nature, which I know you can all relate to, and had been on the ground floor of some formidable brands, HBO, CNBC, MSNBC, and then all the Scripps brands that I helped to co-found. And I found myself at Scripps for 16 years, which was amazing to me. It went by quickly, and I felt the need to just start something new. So I left 4 years ago. And at the same time, a friend of mine who's written some business books said, you know, Susan, you might want to write about your career story because it's kind of an interesting one. And that had me standing back and thinking, well, what were all the factors that helped to influence my getting into top posts in companies? And that's what the book's all about. It works. New Rules of the Game. This is not just my story, but I interviewed a dozen CEOs, mostly women, but some men as well. And all of our stories are woven into this book. And it works under this sort of uber idea that I call gamesmanship, which is a way of expressing your competitive spirit in a healthy way. And I'll get into that when we get into the chapters. So I was a kid raised in the Midwest, and I was born with this enormous competitive drive. But God's sorry joke on me, I did not have one athletic bone in my body. So what to do? So what I ended up doing is channeling all of this competitive drive into games. Every kind of game I'm at, board games, card games, video games, jumping rope games, although that did test my dexterity a little bit. But all of these games, and I realized that there's a lot that we can learn from playing games. But something happened to me in middle school and into high school that happens to a lot of little girls. We start getting socialized to tamp down our competitive spirit. And then in addition to that, many of us didn't grow up playing team sports with at least the intensity or frequency of little boys. And I'm going to put the big disclaimer on right now. I've spoken to a lot of mixed audiences, and I realize that I am generalizing here. Lots of little boys didn't grow up playing sports, and lots of girls, made Olympic teams. But overall, when you take a snapshot of the marketplace today, this is what it is. So we didn't learn how to play team sports growing up. So what ends up happening is that you come into the workplace as adults, men and women, and your points of view on competing and winning and losing are very different. And so what the book does is it bridges that gap so that it can help the reader to advance. And it's really interesting, all this, how being ladylike at work, it plays itself out in a lot of subtle ways. And it plays itself out around gender roles specifically. So I thought it was kind of intriguing that a couple of weeks ago, Michelle Obama, she gave a commencement speech, and she said, in talking about her work as First Lady, she was reflecting on it, and she said, was I too loud and emasculating? Was I too soft? And so you have the highest office in the land, the most senior woman in the world, arguably, and she's thinking about it, and I'm sure she's thinking about as she's raising her daughters, what this all looks like. And so it's a little bit of a muddled mess, if you will. I remember when we were starting out HGTV, and I was having drinks one night with a girlfriend, and she was in business, and we were talking about this whole, this new business that I was on the ground floor of and I was going to help to create, and my career and all these things. And she stopped and she said, "You know, Susan, you're really ambitious." And I had one of those moments of, well, that's rude. But then I thought to myself, now wait a minute. I mean, even I'm buying into some of this double standard stuff. So it does befall us. And advancing, as we move up, it becomes trickier for women because of all kinds of things, and we'll get into that. So I am not suggesting that women act like men at work. That would be really counterproductive. But what I am suggesting is that you think like and act like an athlete would. And I had to learn this because I wasn't one of those. But by that I mean composed, confident, having mental fortitude, thinking like and acting like a winner. And you know, you may have heard the phrase, you fake it till you make it. I did a lot of faking it along the way, not feeling like a winner, but acting like a winner. Because I realized that, especially for women, we're looked at and scrutinized a little bit more than the guys are in terms of whether we can carry ourselves as leaders. And trust me, I'm half Greek and half Italian. None of this came easily, but I learned it, so I know that the reader can read, and hopefully you all will, you'll be reading the book, and if it is an issue for you, you'll be able to learn it too. So the 10 strategies under gamesmanship, the first 7 are skills and behaviors, and the last 3 deal with emotional maturity. And that takes us from worker to leader. So I'll go through each of these. Conditioning, just like an athlete needs to condition their body for game day, so too do we need to have conditioning skills if we want a senior leadership position. And again, another disclaimer, not everyone wants a senior leadership position. I get it. But if you do, here are the 3 skills that I write about in the book. Line experience, financial knowledge, and having a global view. So what's line experience? And I have to tell you, I've done a lot of universities with this talk, and this is the one that really resonates for young adults because it's not something you necessarily think about. Line experience, these are the jobs that directly impact the profitability of your company. Usually there's a revenue component attached, but not always. So sales is the easiest one. It's clear, it's a line job. Marketing can be a line job, it's a little grayer. Product jobs, where you're creating products and creating services to push the profitability of your company, all of those are line jobs. And in my book, I've got a lot of different examples of it. So if you want a senior position, having this operating and line experience is very important. So that's what that's about. Second, financial knowledge. I did not have one finance class in undergraduate or graduate school. I learned it all on the job. But what happened to me is in middle management when I was at CNBC, somebody handed me an income statement, right? And I went, uh-oh, I need to learn this. So I asked to be sent somewhere. So they sent me to UVA Darden, and I was there for a week or 2 taking some finance. And I learned enough to get by. And then once I was in my job, I became more conversant because I was speaking to shareholders. And I needed to be more conversant. So this is all stuff you can learn, especially if you're a publicly traded company. It's all there. And you don't need to understand, you know, the SEC rules of reporting. That's, your accounting people do that. But what you do need to understand is what's an income statement? What's a balance sheet? Because these are the language of business. And the third one, a global view. I started the international department at HGTV and traveled the world and learned how important having a global view is. This helped me to appreciate diversity beyond gender diversity. Diversity that's cultural diversity around the senior table and how important that is. So this is another one that For all of you who are thinking about senior leadership roles, I mean, clearly the world is where we're going to be pushing our top line growth. Okay, so those are conditioning skills. And see, I'm going back. I knew that I wouldn't be caught up. Okay, let me push forward here. Composure. Composure, and I talked a little bit about this earlier. So composure is both how we carry ourselves and how we communicate. And in terms of how you carry yourself, as a woman, there is more scrutiny about whether you can make, it's all about, we're so emotional, and because we're so emotional, we can't make well-reasoned decisions. And so how you carry yourself is very important. And, I had to learn this one, as I said earlier. Deep breaths. In the book, I talk about all kinds of ways. Sleep, getting enough sleep. These kinds of things really impact whether or not you're going to be composed on the job. So that's carriage, and words, it's kind of interesting, but McKinsey did a study, and they said that on average, women speak 20,000 words a day, and men speak 7,000 words a day. And so you wonder why we have this communication gap sometimes. And what it is, brevity, clarity, these kinds of things I learned. The easiest thing for me was to just talk, but I was always with men. My whole career, I was side by side with men, not women. And so I could tell when I lost them. I mean, it didn't take much for me to get the guys to tune me out. So what I had to learn is how to be crystal clear and just very, less is more. Brevity is more. And I want to read, one of the women I interviewed, Pat Mitchell, she was CEO of PBS and a number of other media companies, and she worked for Ted Turner. And I don't know if you've all heard of Ted Turner, but he was Turner Broadcasting, he's kind of iconic. So she's describing her first meeting with Ted, her first on the job experience. And she said, "The first meeting I had with Ted, he cut me off after about 3 sentences. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm not through. I did all this work. I've got all this presentation done. I'm ready to tell you more." And he said, "I'm not ready to hear it. Meeting over." I was so upset. I went back to my office and was writing my resignation letter because I was thinking, I'm 40-something years old. I've been in this business 20 years, and I'm not going to have somebody just say no. Then he called me on the phone, and he said, "I know you're upset. Why are you upset?" And she said, "Because nobody since my father told me no when they didn't have to explain why." And he said, "Well, that's just the way I operate. I'm going to be very decisive, and you'll get a yes or no. It's just the way I operate." And she finishes the story by saying, "The training I got from him was invaluable. I learned how to present my case very quickly and very succinctly." And speed's our enemy, and so that's another reason why our ability to be very clear and brief is important. So that's what composure is all about. Okay. Rule 3, offense. So playing offense, if you're an athlete, is scoring points for your team, right? So playing offense for a company is scoring points for your company, making money for your company through deals, new partnerships, new products and services. All of these are playing offense. So playing offense is showing your company the money you can make for them, which always reminds me of a clip from an old movie. Have any of you seen Jerry Maguire? Okay, so I'm going to set this up for you in case you don't remember. Jerry Maguire's he's a sports agent. He's lost all of his clients except one, Cuba Gooding Jr. And Cuba Gooding Jr. knows he's got Jerry by the short hairs. Showing your company the money, and that's what playing offense is all about. However, see, one of the funny things that can happen with women is we have to ask if we want to be successful. We have to ask for resources, for people, for technology, all of these things to do the best jobs we can do for our companies, but how we ask. See, there's lots of B words that can be assigned us, of which bossy is the nicest one. So how we ask makes a difference.